There is a man in this country who has been changing his own oil since he was 16 years old. He has a concrete floor in his garage, a drain pan he has used for 30 years, and a set of socket wrenches his father handed him. He has never paid a dealership $180 for an oil change because he knows it is a $12 job in 20 minutes of his Saturday morning. That man is becoming illegal. Not illegal in the way that sends you to jail. Illegal in the quiet, corporate way. The way where the car you bought, paid for in full, and have the title to in your glove box, has been quietly handed over to a software system you do not own, cannot access, and are not allowed to modify. The automakers, the dealerships, and the private equity firms behind them have spent the last decade building a wall between you and your own engine. And in this investigation, we are going to show you exactly how they built it, brick by brick, and what it will cost you if you try to climb over it. We cross-referenced dealership service pricing data, 5 years of right-to-repair legislative records, and independent mechanic testimony from across the country. What we found is a systematic and deliberate campaign to criminalize the independent repair of your own vehicle. We are going to expose the oil change sensor scam, the warranty void trap, and the software lockout that the industry spent $40 million lobbying to keep in place. The first weapon they used against you is the oil life monitor. For 100 years, changing your oil was simple physics. Oil degrades, heat and friction break down the molecular chain. You drain it, you replace it, and the engine stays clean. A mechanic could look at the dipstick, rub the oil between two fingers, and tell you whether it was time. That knowledge belonged to the person who owned the vehicle. Modern vehicles have replaced that knowledge with an algorithm. Every car built after approximately 2010 has an oil life monitoring system. A sensor reads engine temperature, RPM cycles, and mileage, and it calculates when the car thinks it needs an oil change. It sounds like a convenience. It is a trap. Here is why. That monitor does not reset when you pour in fresh oil. It does not know you changed the oil. It only resets when a technician plugs in a proprietary scan tool, navigates through a manufacturer-specific menu buried 3 layers deep, and executes a reset command. On a Toyota, that reset sequence is different from a Ford. On a Ford, it is different from a BMW. And on some late-model European vehicles, the reset requires a software subscription that independent shops cannot legally purchase. So you change your own oil. You do everything right. You torque the drain plug, you seat the new filter, you pour in the correct viscosity, and you put the cap back on. But the warning light stays on. The car's computer does not know you did anything. It is still counting down to 0 based on the old oil. And if you drive it that way, modern vehicles will begin to log what they call a maintenance fault in the permanent ECU record. That record follows the car to every dealership, every resale, every insurance claim for the life of the vehicle. They have not made it illegal to change your own oil. They have made it so that if you do, the car quietly builds a case against you. The second weapon is the warranty void clause. When you buy a new vehicle, you sign a warranty agreement. That agreement says the manufacturer will cover defects for a defined period. What most buyers do not read, buried in the fine print on page 47, is the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act misinterpretation that dealerships have been exploiting for a decade. Here is what the law actually says. A manufacturer cannot void your warranty simply because you performed your own maintenance, as long as you use parts that meet the manufacturer's specifications. This is federal law. It has been on the books since 1975. But here is what dealerships have been doing. They have been telling customers that any service performed outside the dealership network by anyone other than a certified technician using OEM parts logged into their proprietary service tracking system is grounds to void the powertrain warranty. That is a lie. But it is a lie that costs the average American thousands of dollars in unnecessary dealership service bills every year because almost nobody knows the law well enough to push back. And the automakers have found a way to make it technically true anyway. On certain late model platforms, particularly GM's new generation truck line and Ford's EcoBoost family, the ECU monitors what it calls a service interval chain. If the oil reset is not performed with a certified tool, the system flags the service as incomplete. If you subsequently develop an engine issue, the dealership service advisor pulls that flag, sees an incomplete service record, and tells you the warranty claim is denied because you cannot prove proper maintenance was performed. You did perform proper maintenance, but you cannot prove it because you did not have their software to log it. They have built a system where the burden of proof requires a tool you are not allowed to own. The third weapon is the software lock. This is where it stops being an inconvenience and starts being a coordinated monopoly. Modern vehicles are not mechanical machines with computers in them. They are computers that happen to have wheels. The engine control unit, the transmission module, the ABS controller, the fuel injection system, every one of these systems runs on proprietary firmware. When a component fails, the replacement part is often a blank module that must be programmed to the specific VIN of your vehicle before it will function. A blank throttle body from an aftermarket supplier costs $60. Programming that module to communicate with your specific vehicle's network requires a software interface that the manufacturer licenses exclusively to their certified dealership network. We spoke to independent mechanics across 7 states. The story is the same everywhere. A customer brings in a late model vehicle with a faulty fuel pump module. The mechanic can diagnose it. He can source the part. He can install it in 45 minutes. But when he plugs in his generic OBD reader, the vehicle will not recognize the new component. It sits in what the industry calls a learned idle, a state where the car knows something has changed but refuses to accept it without manufacturer authorization. The customer's options are to tow the car to the dealership, pay the dealership's diagnostic fee, pay the dealership's labor rate, and pay for the OEM part at 3 times the price. Or drive home with a car that does not run. The independent mechanic, a man who built his business on knowledge and skill, has been turned into a tow truck driver. And the customer, who owns the vehicle, has been turned into a hostage. This is not an engineering necessity. Standardized communication protocols exist. The OBD2 standard was created specifically to allow any scanner to read any car. For emissions data and basic diagnostics, it still works. But the automakers have quietly moved the critical repair functions off the open OBD protocol and onto closed proprietary networks that run parallel to it. They did this deliberately and systematically. This is not an accident. This is a product architecture decision made in a boardroom to eliminate competition from the independent repair market. The fourth weapon is the lobby. In 2020, Massachusetts voters passed a ballot initiative called the Right to Repair Law. It required automakers to provide independent shops with the same wireless access to vehicle data that dealerships receive. The industry responded by spending over $25 million opposing it. When the law passed anyway, a coalition of automakers filed suit in federal court to block its implementation. As of 2026, the law has not been fully enforced. The data access that Massachusetts voters mandated is still sitting in legal limbo, while the average independent shop in that state watches customers drive past them toward the dealership. At the federal level, the story is worse. A national right to repair bill has been introduced in Congress multiple times over the past decade. Each time, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, a lobbying group funded by virtually every major automaker, spends tens of millions of dollars ensuring it never makes it to a floor vote. They argue that opening vehicle software to independent repair creates cybersecurity vulnerabilities. They argue that only certified technicians can safely work on modern vehicles. What they do not argue, because they cannot argue it honestly, is that the monopoly on repair data has generated billions in captive revenue for the dealership service network while driving hundreds of independent shops out of business. The fifth weapon is the filter you can no longer reach. If all of this sounds abstract, let us make it physical. Pop the hood on a 2009 Ford F-150. The oil filter is right there. You can see it, reach it with one hand, and replace it in 4 minutes. Now pop the hood on a 2023 Ford F-150 with the 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine. The oil filter is buried behind a plastic engine cover, beneath a coolant line, and above a structural crossmember that runs directly through the service path. Ford engineers did not put it there because it was the best location for the engine. They put it there because it makes the job miserable enough that a statistically significant percentage of owners will give up and drive to the dealer. This is called accessibility engineering, and it is the physical equivalent of the software lock. On BMW's current N20 and N26 four-cylinder engines, the oil filter housing bolt requires a special splined socket that is not sold at any retail parts store. You can order the tool online, but BMW engineers chose that fastener specifically because it falls outside the standard metric and SAE socket sets that every American garage contains. The tool exists, the knowledge exists, but the friction is the product. The verdict. The man with the drain pan in his garage is not going away quietly, but the vehicles he is allowed to work on are. Every year, the window of accessible vehicles gets smaller as the fleet of locked machines gets larger. By 2030, if the current legislative trajectory holds and the right to repair bills continue to die in committee, the majority of vehicles on American roads will require dealership-level software access for any repair beyond replacing a cabin air filter. The skill your father taught you, the skill that kept your family mobile when money was tight, the skill that made you independent from a system designed to extract money from you at every turn. They are engineering that skill into obsolescence. The goal was never better cars. The goal was a captive customer. They are not selling you a truck. They are selling you a subscription to your own transportation. So what do you do? The answer is the same answer it always is when the corporate machine tries to lock you out. You buy older and you buy simpler. If you need a daily driver that you can actually own, look for anything built before the 2013 model year. Before the industry standardized on closed CAN bus architecture and before software locked modules became universal. The 2010 through 2012 window on most domestic trucks and mid-size sedans represents the last generation of vehicles where the majority of service work requires tools, not software. A 2011 Toyota Tacoma or a 2012 Chevy Silverado 1500 with the 5.3-liter V8 is a vehicle a competent home mechanic can maintain completely without a scan tool subscription. They are not glamorous. They do not have a 12-inch touchscreen, but they belong to you in a way that a 2024 model never will. For the scan tool issue, there is a legitimate open-source alternative called the OBD2 Community Ecosystem built around the ELM327 chipset and platforms like TorquePro and ForScan. For Ford vehicles specifically, ForScan gives you access to module-level programming that approaches factory-level capability at a fraction of the cost. It will not unlock a dealer-only VIN pairing, but it will handle the oil reset, the TPMS calibration, and the throttle body relearn that would otherwise cost you a dealership service appointment. The independent mechanic community has been building these tools quietly because they had no other choice. And if you are buying new and you have no alternative, go to the dealership with the maintenance records question before you sign anything. Ask them specifically, if I change my own oil using the correct specification fluid and reset the monitor with a third-party tool, does that void any portion of my powertrain warranty? Get the answer in writing. Because the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act says they cannot say yes. And if they say yes anyway, you have documentation of a misrepresentation made during the sale of a federally warranted product. The hood of your car is yours. The oil inside it is yours. The wrench in your hand is yours. Do not let them tell you otherwise. Learn the platforms they have not locked yet. Buy the tools the independent community has built. And the next time a service advisor quotes you $180 to drain a pan and fill it back up, remember exactly what you are paying for. You are not paying for the oil. You are paying for the wall they built around it.